Hey there, it's Liz from No Trace. I'm always looking for creative ways to repurpose my tiniest scraps of fabric, like these. My latest tiny scrap busting project is to turn those little scraps of fabric into quilty fabric earrings. These actually are super easy to make and they sew up really fast. I'm going to show you how to do it. Let's go. In order to make these scrappy earrings, you're going to need some fabric scraps, obviously. I'm going to be piecing together small pieces of fabric in this color tone, but you could also just use one piece of fabric that has something cute on it as your earring. You're going to need a couple of tools to make your earrings, and one of those is either an awl, so this has a sharp pointy end, or if you don't have an awl like this, you could use an old sewing machine needle. This will also work to push through your fabric and make a nice hole. And then you'll also need some jewelry pliers or any pliers that are smooth and flat on the inside. You'll need some ear wires to put into your ears. And then you'll also need jump rings. I'm using a larger jump ring. It's about a 1/4 inch jump ring, and then a smaller 1/8 of an inch jump ring. Instead of jump rings, you could also use these little cord ends. These basically clamp onto your fabric and then you just squish them closed with your pliers. So these would work instead of just using jump rings. The first thing to do is decide the shape and size of the earrings you want to make. So the first pair I made were more of a teardrop shape, and these were a little bit harder to work with. The second shape I made was triangles, and I gotta say these were a lot easier to work with. So decide the shape you want to make your earrings. Obviously you could do whatever shape you want, and then you're going to want to cut out a pattern piece from paper for the shape that you want. And remember to make your pattern piece a little bit larger than what you're aiming for your finished earring. So this has about an extra 1/4 inch for the seam allowance for the earring. Once you have your shape, you can just cut it right out of some fabric that you want to use. What I'm going to do is piece together some tiny bits of fabric until I get a shape that is as large as this triangle. I'm going to start with a little bit, and I'm going to get a second little bit. I'm going to put these right sides together. They're solid, so it doesn't really matter. But I want to line up the straight edges. So line up one straight edge from this little guy with one straight edge from this little guy, and then I'm going to take it to the machine and sew them together. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I want to make sure that my stitch length is kind of short. So normally I bump my stitch length up. Right now I'm going to keep it at around 2.4 or 2.5 millimeters. Once these two pieces are joined, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to press open the seam with my fingers, or sometimes I'll use a chopstick and just press. And then I'm also going to flip it over and press it with the iron. Then, if I need to trim anything, I'm going to go ahead and trim this little spot. And I am going to add another piece of fabric onto what I've started so far. So I'm going to take a piece of yellow and I am going to sew it onto this side of my purple piece. Once again, I'm going to join the yellow with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, third piece is attached. I'm just going to keep adding pieces onto my working piece here until I have enough to cut out this triangle. So I'll be right back. As soon as my piece is large enough for the pattern piece to be covered by fabric, I'm going to go ahead and trace the pattern piece out onto my fabric however I think will look best. Once it's traced, which I think you can barely see, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out with my scissors. And as always, I'm saving my teeny tiny bits. If you use all natural fibers like cotton or linen or hemp, you can compost your tiny bits You can also save them and use them as stuffing, or you can use them in other crazy quilting projects. So save those bits. Now I have the front for one of my earrings. I'm gonna go through these same steps with the second earring. So I'll be right back. Okay, I have my 2 earring fronts cut out. So I'm just gonna use my pattern piece to trace the back parts of my earrings out of some solid fabric. So I'll be right back. All right, I have my 4 little triangles. So these are coming together. And what I'm gonna do next is put the triangles with the right sides together and just pin them together. And then I'm gonna stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I wanna leave an opening of about 2 inches on one side so we can turn our triangles right side out. Now that these are sewn together, I'm gonna take a minute and cut off, where are my scissors? I'm gonna cut off the tips of each of the 3 corners of the triangle, and I want to get pretty close to the stitches without cutting the stitches, and that'll just help the points be pointier when I go to turn this right side out. Now I'm going to turn them right side out, and I have my handy dandy chopstick ready to go, but I'm actually going to want something even pointier for these corners. Okay, handy dandy chopstick has taken me as far as it can. So now I'm gonna use a pencil. You could use anything that has a little bit more point to it to really get up into those corners. And then I'm also going to use a pin and see if I can't get these corners even a tiny bit pointier with a pin. I'll show you, just a sec. I don't want to be overly aggressive with this pin, but I am going to work it into that corner a little bit and just get a little bit more of a point here at the end. But I do want to be careful not to push too hard or tug too hard and end up with a hole in my fabric. Now it's time to iron, and I definitely want to make sure to fold in the open spot and make sure it's laying nice and flat when I go to iron my little earrings. All right, so this one is ready to be pressed, and my iron always turns off. Hey, if you have a favorite iron, let me know in the comments. I think I might be ready for an upgrade. And if you're getting any value out of this video, give it a thumbs up, because I really appreciate that, and that tells YouTube that, hey, this person's doing something and I appreciate it. Oh, they're looking so cute. I am so excited. We're almost done. The next step, I'm gonna hand stitch the opening closed with a ladder stitch, but you could totally do a top stitch around your earrings. I just decided that I don't like the look of the top stitch personally as much as when there's no top stitch. So you decide what works best for you, and I am gonna use a needle and thread and just do some simple hand stitching. Okay, so I've got a knot in the end of my thread, and I am gonna do a very simple ladder stitch or invisible stitch. So I'm gonna start by placing my needle on the inside of this opening, and I'm gonna push it through under that fold there, and I'm going to come out that fold near where my seam ends and just make sure my knot is down in there. Obviously you might want to use a thread that's the same color, but I'm using a contrasting thread so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to sew right directly across from there into this other folded edge, and I'm going to grab a little pinch, maybe about 1/8 of an inch, and tug. And then once again, I'm going to go across the opening into the folded edge, grab a little pinch, and I'm just going to continue that all the way down the opening until it's closed. I'm going to do that on my second earring too, and I'll be right back. I just want to show you how I finish my invisible stitch. So I came out here at my last stitch, and then I just went back under my second to last stitch. So now I have a little loop, and I can thread my needle into that loop, then tighten that loop, and then thread the needle through this loop, you know, just making a knot. And then I'm going to tighten up my loops, make sure they're nice and tight. And then, well, it's not my finest knot ever, but I think you get the idea. Then we push the needle into the seam and out the back of the earring somewhere else, and that'll help the knot go into the seam and be less visible. So it's not maybe not my best work, but you kind of get the idea there, hopefully. I hope. And then we just cut this thread off. All right, we are almost done here. So the opening is closed, and now I want to attach the large jump rings to the fabric. And like I said, you can either pierce the top of your fabric with a sewing machine needle, or if you have an awl, that'll work too. I'll show you both ways. So I want the jump ring to be pretty close to the top edge, and I have determined that this is the top of each of my pieces. So I'm just going to pierce through my fabric with the awl. I'm about 1/8 of an inch away from the very top. And then I'm gently pushing to create an opening that a jump ring will fit in. I'm going to open, so a jump ring has a little bitty hole, a little gap, I should say. And I'm going to open the jump ring with the pliers I mentioned earlier. Just hold one end of the jump ring with my hand, and then with the pliers just gently open like that, so that it is wide enough to fit onto the fabric. And I might have to go back and widen it a little bit more. I just want to get that ring in the hole. Ta-da! And then I'm going to go ahead, actually before I close that, I am going to add a smaller jump ring. And that is because the way the ear hooks, the ear wires are oriented, they will work better on a jump ring that is facing forward. So the jump ring that is parallel with the earring, if that makes sense. But you could also just try with one jump ring, put the ear wire on, and then see if you like how the earring lays on your ear. If you don't, then you would probably want to add a second jump ring. Okay, I'm just tightening, just squishing that jump ring closed with my flat pliers. Now I have this jump ring in place. So then we just need to add the ear wires. And these ear wires or earring hooks have a little gap at the base. And if it's a little too small to fit your jump ring, you can just use your pliers to open it a little bit more. Get the jump ring in there. Come on now. And then we'll close it up again, assuming we ever get it in there. I'll be right back. You don't have to watch me struggle. Just a sec. I did it. It's attached. So now I'm just going to go through those same steps with the other earring, and I'll show you how they look in just a second. Oh, I forgot. I was going to show you how to make the hole with a sewing machine needle. I already made it with the awl, but basically you just pierce the tip of your earring with your sewing machine needle, and you actually want to push it through a good amount so that you get some of that width from the back end of your sewing machine needle in the fabric. That'll make it easier for the jump ring to fit. I'm done with my crazy quilty earrings, and I gotta say, I think I like them. Let me know in the comments what shape earring you're gonna make. Are you gonna go for triangle, circle, square? Leave a comment, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're looking for another project that uses the same scrappy, crazy quilty approach that I used on these earrings, I'm linking to another video for a really cool bag right here, so check it out.